Hi, this is my first legitimate YouTube channel, and you're gonna have to bear with me because, like I said, this is my first video, and it's gonna be story time, so it's gonna be a little bit longer than a lot of the videos that I want to put out there. But this is hopefully the start of a science channel and maybe a few rants as well. It just depends on my mood and what you guys as viewers want to see. This particular video, it's about how I was not vaccinated for a childhood disease and ended up acquiring that childhood disease in my 20s when I was in my graduate program, and it was awful. It was the worst medical experience I've ever had. It was the worst disease, health-related issue I've ever had in my life. And I have had major jaw surgery, 8 teeth taken out for orthodontic work, kidney infection to the point where I almost had kidney failure because of misdiagnosed UTI, allergic reaction where I was in the ER for 3 hours, and I've had broken bones. So like I know pain. I've seen the inside of an ER quite a few times, and this was by far one of the worst issues because it could have been preventable at multiple different time points in my life. My master's was partially funded by a stipend where I was a teacher assistant for a genetics lab. And I don't think that I contracted chickenpox there, mostly because none of my students had chickenpox. And none of them had it before that. So there was like 100%, 99.9% chance that I did not get it from those undergraduate students. I was very active in my church, and about 2 weeks prior to my symptoms, I was taking part in a church function. It was called the spaghetti dinner, and it's where college students can come and get a free spaghetti dinner. And I think parishioners only pay like $1 or $2, but it's like a welcoming, like, hey, welcome to the church, welcome to university. Here's free spaghetti, and maybe you'll win some door prizes. And it's really fun. It's a really great way to meet people. So I knew a lot of them, and I had a lot of interaction with children. And I'm not saying by any means that this is like their fault. Um, like, children just like to come up if they know you and they're familiar with you. They like to come up and hug on you, and it's the most adorable and cutest thing ever, except when they're possibly contaminating you with pathogens. So it's like it's a double-edged sword. And I don't know. Like, I know the anti-vax movement is really popular, particularly in this decade, but I don't know. Like I said, I don't know. I don't recall any children or families complaining of their child having chickenpox. So, I mean, it's very likely that I could have gotten it elsewhere. Varicella has a 2-week incubation period. So, the 2 weeks before my symptoms started, I was either teaching my lab or I was at church. That was my life. So, that's where I think I might have contracted it, but I'm not, like I said, I'm really not sure where. The symptoms occurred the weekend before my 23rd birthday. The night before, it was the night that I arrived at my parents' house in Natchez. I was having lower back aches, and I just contributed that to driving, because when I drive, I tend not to stop anywhere unless I really have to use the bathroom, because I just want to get there and make good time and just, not have to drive anymore. But then the next day, I had like 3 blisters. I had one here. It's kind of, I don't know if you can see it with the shiny. There's one here, and then one on my arm, and like in that area. After lunch of that day, I had more blisters in different areas that I didn't recognize before. And I had a really intense migraine and then like really, really bad body aches that I would almost describe as like flu-like symptoms. But I've never had the flu, so I can't really compare it to the same body aches. It just felt like deep tissue, like aching. My joints ached, it just right down to my very bones. I was just hurting everywhere to the point where I was asking my mother for like bear. I was like, hey Ma, do you have some like bear aspirin or something? And at that point she knew I was really sick because I never really asked for any kind of over-the-counter pain medication. I typically just drink water and deal with it because I'm sure like I'm probably just dehydrated, so I'll just drink some water, and that was not the case by far. The next day I had more blisters. I counted like 18 different blisters on my torso, my stomach, and I didn't even look at my back because I just couldn't. Um, but my body aches were gone. That was great. Or I thought it was great. I remember at the time I was texting my best friend. I was like, hey, I was like sending her pictures of my blisters, like, Megan, what is this? I was like, 'cause she is a biology student too in the master's program. And I was just like, I don't know what this is. My education has not prepared me for this. And I was just so upset. And I was like, at the time I was in pathology, and I was like going through my notes like, I don't know. I can't find anything that's like this because none of the blisters weren't necessarily itching at that point, and I was just so upset. And when I was flossing and like brushing my teeth, I noticed I had actually had blisters in the very back of my mouth. And at that point, I really started freaking out. I was like, oh my God, it's systemic, like it's everywhere. And it's like, I'm gonna die. So like I told my mom about it and I showed her everything, and she's like, we're gonna take you to the hospital now, and you're gonna talk to a medical professional about this. And so we did, and we went to the clinic, and it's the only clinic that was open on a Saturday in Natchez, and the power was out. I was like, I don't know how this happens, but every time I went to that hospital, something bad would happen. Like, I never go there, like, and they don't live there anymore, but I never went there after that because I was just like, I'm just gonna deal with it. Did I break my arm? Oh well, I'm just gonna hope it sets correctly because literally every time I went there, something bad happened. But we went there, and so the power kicked back on after waiting there for a little bit, but the AC still hadn't kicked on yet, and they weren't able to use their computers because there's a certain threshold for computers. They won't turn on if it's like over 85 degrees in the room. Um, so the nurse saw me, and she's like, I'm just, I'm not gonna touch you. It's just like, I think you might have chickenpox, but you're kind of old for that. And I don't know what else you might have come across. And I was like, well, I work in a BSL-2 laboratory, but honestly, those pathogens would not present in this manner. Like, it's C. diff and anthracis, and C. diff is gastrointestinal, anthrax is respiratory, and I'd be dead by now because this is day 3 of symptoms. So, like, it's not. And those were non-virulent strains to begin with, so it's not like that would have really happened. I wouldn't have really come in contact with it. And she's just like, you need to go to a facility that can handle this because I can't deal with you. I can't even really test if you have chickenpox. I'm just like, well, shit. I was like, well, where am I supposed to go? And she's like, well, I would recommend going to Baton Rouge or Jackson. And like, those are 2.5 hours away depending on traffic. And there was no way at that point, after waiting in that waiting room for a while for the power to kick on, there's no way I was going to be able to get there in time to set up an appointment or to see a physician. And so we went to Monroe, to one of the only hospitals that was open at the time. And I've got some bad things to say about it, so I'm not going to tell you which hospital. It was just overall a bad experience. I don't think the physician at Monroe really gave me an adequate medical examination. She didn't even really look on at the blisters on my stomach. She only looked at the ones on the back of my neck and on my arm, and she concluded that the virus had pretty much run its course because they had crusted over. And my bad on my part, I gave her incorrect medical information because I was sure. I was like, yeah, I've been vaccinated. Psh, I've been vaccinated. No, I hadn't been vaccinated. And with this information, she thought that surely, okay, you had the vaccination, you have some kind of immunity to it. It's going to be a very mild response. That's what she thought was going on. Also, during that time period, that particular vaccine, the efficacy waned over time, so it's very likely, she thought it was likely that, it wasn't, I didn't have a stronger reaction to it, but I would only have mild case of chickenpox but that was not the case at all. Typically, if they think that you have chickenpox, they will give you a shot that it halts or slows down the viral replication, making your symptoms and your blisters much less severe. And also, it shortens the time of you having that disease. However, there are two unknowns to this. I'm not sure when the shot should be given according to your symptoms. At that point, I was at day 3, so the shot might not have done anything. But she didn't give it to me. Like, regardless, she didn't give me the shot. And 2 days later, or really a day and a half later, my blisters got so much worse. The only thing that physician did was prescribe me pills that would help stop the itching, but it didn't. I looked it up later, and they were actually anti-anxiety meds, and I don't have prescription drugs, and I haven't taken a lot of them in the past, except if medically prescribed, of course. But I don't think that was the best prescription to give someone with chickenpox. All it did for me was make it really difficult to sleep. I had insomnia, so I couldn't even sleep off a lot of the symptoms like I would normally. And also, instead of feeling itchy, which to me was more of a superficial pain, it felt like 100 needles were in each pox mark, and it felt much deeper, and it was very painful. That could have just been the way I reacted to the medication. I'm not exactly sure what happened as far as that is concerned, but when that started happening, I just quit taking the medication and let the virus run its course. Which in retrospect, I wish I had done before, because I could have slept a lot longer. But it was very bad. The best way to describe the way the blisters happened was like a very, very slow food allergy. Like, just so slowly. Blisters forming, the itching, the swelling, the inflammation, all of that, but occurring for days. Like, it just dragged out. And the blisters, I thought, they were going to be small like they were, but they were huge, and they were everywhere. They were from the very top of my head down to my toes in my extremities, which is really, really weird. I had blisters in places that I don't like to talk about. They were literally everywhere. And which is really, really strange, because chickenpox doesn't always present in that way. Usually chickenpox sticks to your torso and your head, but I had chickenpox in the webbing of my fingers. I had them in my toes. I had them all over my legs and all over my arms. It was horrendous. It was the worst experience I have ever had in my entire life. And I had them really bad, really, really awfully on my face and on my scalp. My scalp was so bad I couldn't brush my hair because it would pull on the blisters, and it would either hurt or cause it to start itching, so I couldn't do anything with my hair. And it was just, because I was bedridden for a week, it was like, my hair was matted and crusted and gross and awful, and it was the worst thing to try to deal with after the pox started to recede. And not only that, I had pox in my nose and in my mouth. I had it on my tongue, and I still have pox marks in the very back of my throat. I still have bumps from where that was. And I had pox on my gums as well. It was awful. I couldn't wear a retainer because I had pox everywhere. And I couldn't eat. I couldn't chew. The only thing I could do was drink Gatorade, and so I ended up losing 10 pounds in a week and a half. And I know part of that was probably due to dehydration, but it was 2 whole days I could not eat anything. I couldn't even eat ice cream. Like, and my roommate, God bless his soul, he bought like a gallon of chocolate ice cream and like Fruity Pebbles and Oreos and like all these things that you would want when you were sick, and like soup and pudding and all this stuff, and I couldn't eat any of it. I couldn't bring myself to eat any of it. I was in so much pain that I was hoping that I would pass away in my sleep. It was that bad. Like it was so bad that I was hoping that I would just go away quietly in my sleep, and I was just like, I wouldn't have to feel pain anymore. I wouldn't have to pay my student loans. Like I was really just, I was in so much pain, and I was worried for a while that my face would become disfigured because of all the pox marks, and you can see that um, from the pictures. But I was okay with becoming disfigured when I realized that the pox marks that were around my eyes were becoming infected. Now, my T-zone in particular becomes very, very oily, and it was causing the pox to become infected. And that is what actually causes scarring. Like everybody says that if you scratch it causes scarring. That's not necessarily true at all. It's when they become infected or if they pop and they don't heal correctly. And that's what happens when if you scratch, you can more than likely um, allowing bacteria to enter and to infect your sores. And you can only clean with soap and water. You can't clean with hydrogen peroxide because first off, not only does the hydrogen peroxide actually damage the soft tissue um, underneath your first layer of skin, most bacteria have an enzyme which actually breaks down the hydrogen peroxide before it can actually kill and disinfect the area, which is awful. So I was really scared about these becoming infected because when that happens, if they're infected and they're that close to your eye, they can cause your eye to become infected, which can lead to blindness, and you can lose your eye if it becomes really bad. So I was more worried about not being able to see than I was about scarring. And I still have scarring, and it's not like little lines or anything like that where you might get if you like, you know, scratch yourself on a thorn. It's like serious angry scars. Like they're mostly nodes. Like it looks like a little albino mole. Like it's just gonna like, hi, I'm gonna make your skin look weird. Like it's just, and it's not bothersome to me anymore. Like I know I can go to a dermatologist and get it fixed, but honestly, I would much rather spend that money on like sushi or cats or something. Um, because I really just don't, I just don't care about it anymore. It's more, it's not interfering with my day-to-day function. So, I mean, it's just an aesthetic thing at this point. And most of those really bad scars are in places that I can cover, like my sleeves or my t-shirt. So it's not really an issue. So yeah, the main reason why I'm sharing these photos, and I haven't even shared these photos with my family, so this is probably going to be the first time they see it. Um, but it's mainly to show you the really, really harmful effects you can have for not vaccinating your children. These are diseases that are preventable. And that's the worst part about this is that these diseases are preventable. You can, like, your children does not have to experience this. You don't have to pay these medical bills and deal with insurance after all of this. So I really, really recommend that you vaccinate your children and just not only are you protecting your child from having to go through this, but you're protecting other people who just cannot get vaccinated for one reason or the other. That is my story. Please share it with other people so you can know how bad and how debilitating these diseases are when nothing's being done about, like when you're not vaccinating kids. So, please like and subscribe to my channel. I will try to have videos out every week. If you have any ideas for what else I should post, or if you have any questions or you want a video in particular, please let me know in the comments, and I will try to get back as to I will try to get back to as many as I can. But anyway, thank you for watching. Bye.